Willie Thrower wasn't built to be a footnote in football history. He was built to open a door that had never been unlocked. In 1953, the National Football League was still deciding who was allowed to lead, who was trusted to think, who was permitted to command the huddle. And Willie Thrower walked straight into that reality. At Michigan State, Thrower was a quarterback who understood the game. He wasn't reckless, he wasn't raw. He was composed, intelligent, and confident, running an offense at a time when very few black athletes were even allowed to touch the football, let alone control it. When the Chicago Bears put Willie Thrower on the field in 1953, history was made. Not quietly, not symbolically, but unmistakably. For the first time in modern NFL history, a black quarterback took snaps in a regular season game. He threw a touchdown pass. He moved the offense. He proved in real time that the position of quarterback had never been about race, only opportunity. And then, something happened that would define decades of NFL history. Willie Thrower disappeared. No second start, no development plan, no patience, no explanation. White quarterbacks were allowed to struggle, to grow, to fail forward. Thrower was allowed one game. Not one season, not 1 year, one afternoon. The league didn't announce a ban, it didn't issue a statement. It simply moved on, as if the moment had never mattered. And that silence became the system. Willie Thrower didn't fail the NFL. The NFL failed the moment Willie Thrower proved he belonged. Because once you prove something is possible, the only way to stop it is to pretend it never happened. If Willie Thrower threw a touchdown pass in his only NFL appearance, why do you think he was never given another chance? And who decides when one game is enough? Willie Thrower wasn't just a football player. He was a pioneer, a man who walked onto the field knowing that for him, every play carried the weight of history. In the early 1950s, America was a country slowly learning to confront its own contradictions. Sports mirrored society. Opportunities were limited by the color of your skin, and positions of leadership on the football field, quarterback, team captain, decision maker, were seen as the domain of white athletes. Enter Willie Thrower, a young man from New Jersey with a football in his hands and a mind sharp enough to read defenses like a book. At Michigan State University, Thrower's talent was undeniable. He wasn't just athletic, he was cerebral. He understood progressions, timing, and field vision in ways that set him apart from many of his peers. Coaches noticed, teammates respected him, and opponents underestimated him at their own peril. Thrower's dual threat capability, moving with agility while keeping his eyes downfield, made him an offensive weapon in a period when most black athletes were pigeonholed into positions defined by speed and strength rather than leadership and intellect. Despite his skill, Thrower faced challenges that had nothing to do with talent. Scouting reports often downplayed his ability to lead a professional offense, subtly suggesting he was better suited for a running back or receiver. He was judged not just for what he could do, but for what the NFL thought he should do. But Willie Thrower did not let conventional thinking dictate his path. In 1953, that path led to the Chicago Bears. The NFL had never seen a black quarterback in the modern era. Thrower became the first black QB to take snaps in a regular season game, a historic moment that should have been celebrated. He threw passes, completed a touchdown, and demonstrated poise that rivaled many veteran players. For a brief moment, it seemed like the barrier had been broken. And then, the silence came. Thrower was given one game, one chance to prove himself. White quarterbacks of the time were allowed multiple seasons, mistakes, and growth periods. Thrower, one game, one touchdown, one glimpse of history. The NFL did not plan to nurture him, coach him, or invest in him. His talent was real, his intellect unmatched, but the league's priorities, prejudices, and comfort zones didn't allow for it. If Willie Thrower threw a touchdown in his first NFL game, why do you think the league never gave him a second chance? Do you think this was about skill or something much deeper? By the end of his rookie season, Thrower had disappeared from the professional spotlight. History would barely mention him, but the foundation had been laid. He became the proof that black athletes could quarterback at the highest level, if only the system would let them. Thrower's story is not about failure. It's about opportunity denied, potential wasted, and a league unready for progress. In many ways, his journey mirrors the broader struggle of black quarterbacks in the decades to come. Marlon Briscoe, Joe Gilliam, and James Harris, all of whom would face barriers that had nothing to do with talent and everything to do with tradition. And yet, Willie Thrower's brief moment in the spotlight planted a seed for the future. It challenged assumptions, forced conversations, and quietly began reshaping what was possible. Willie Thrower's NFL debut was historic, yet brief. One game, one touchdown, one proof of potential, and then silence. After that moment on the field, the league's response was telling. Thrower's talent was undeniable. Coaches praised his composure. Teammates respected his leadership. Fans who watched him play understood that this young man could command an offense. Yet the NFL, a league defined by traditions and comfort zones, chose inaction. They didn't promote him. They didn't offer development. They didn't give him a second start. Instead, they quietly shelved him. The media, too, played its part. Coverage of Thrower's performance was minimal, buried behind stories of veteran quarterbacks and marquee games. Even sports writers who recognized his accomplishment often framed it as a novelty. An interesting experiment, but let's see what he can really do. That one line carried a subtle but powerful dismissal. The message was clear. Willie Thrower could play, but the league was not ready to trust him. This reaction highlights the systemic barriers black quarterbacks faced in the NFL. It wasn't about ability. Thrower's intelligence, accuracy, and leadership were beyond question. It was about perception and tradition, the unwritten rule that quarterback leadership was for white players. One game, one moment, and the league decided that the risk outweighed the reward. Fans were divided. Some recognized the injustice immediately. Others, influenced by decades of racial bias in sports, saw Thrower's presence as temporary or experimental. Even in Chicago, where the Bears prided themselves on being progressive, there was resistance to fully embracing a black quarterback. Thrower's situation reflects a recurring pattern. Black quarterbacks could succeed only within strict boundaries, and any deviation from that narrow path was met with hesitation or erasure. If you were the coach or GM at that moment, would you have given Willie Thrower a second chance? Do you think public opinion or league tradition would have influenced your decision? Behind the scenes, Thrower continued to train, study film, and maintain his professionalism. He did not publicly complain, but insiders noted his frustration. Every practice and every workout was a reminder. The NFL recognized his talent but refused to reward it. The system was not built to celebrate him. It was designed to test his patience. Thrower's story also set a precedent, showing black athletes what to expect. The next black quarterbacks, Marlon Briscoe in the late 1960s, Joe Gilliam, and James Harris in the 1970s, would encounter similar roadblocks: brief opportunities, excessive scrutiny, and structural barriers unrelated to talent. Thrower's experience became a silent blueprint for what the league was willing to allow and what it would suppress. Despite the setback, Thrower's brief appearance planted a seed for the future. It forced the NFL and fans to confront a question that had been avoided for decades. Could a black quarterback lead a team? Could leadership, intelligence, and skill transcend racial bias? Long before the NFL's hesitation and silence, Willie Thrower had already proven himself at Michigan State University, where his story truly began. College was where his intelligence, discipline, and leadership shone brightest. Here, the young quarterback learned not just how to throw a football, but how to command an offense, read defenses, and inspire teammates, skills that would define his brief yet monumental NFL career. Thrower's arrival at Michigan State was not met with fanfare. He had to earn every opportunity on the field, constantly proving that he belonged in a game and at a position where very few black athletes were given trust. He faced scrutiny and stereotypes, but rather than being discouraged, he thrived under pressure. Coaches recognized his sharp mind, his ability to process defenses, and his calmness under pressure. He was a field general in the making, the kind of quarterback whose leadership elevated everyone around him. During games, Thrower displayed a balance that few of his peers could match. He could move fluidly in the pocket while keeping eyes downfield, making accurate throws under pressure. He had vision and timing that allowed his receivers to maximize space, and his teammates trusted him implicitly. It wasn't just about athleticism, it was about command presence. Yet, even at Michigan State, Thrower was aware of the limitations he would face beyond college. He knew the NFL was still largely unprepared to fully embrace a black quarterback. The whispers from scouts and commentators were subtle but pervasive. Could he lead? Could he handle pressure? Was a black quarterback a long-term solution? College accolades and statistics were not enough. The league's entrenched biases would still be his biggest challenge. Thrower's college career laid the foundation for future generations. He became the blueprint for what a black quarterback could achieve: poise, intelligence, and skill at the highest level. Players like Marlon Briscoe, Joe Gilliam, and James Harris would follow decades later, facing similar structural obstacles but building upon the groundwork that Thrower had silently established. Without his courage and professionalism, the path for those quarterbacks might have been even more obstructed. If Willie Thrower had played in today's NFL, with modern support and media coverage, how different do you think his career would have been? Would he have become a household name alongside today's dual-threat stars, or would systemic bias still have limited him? Beyond the stats and games, Thrower's influence was psychological and symbolic. He demonstrated to black athletes that the quarterback position was attainable, that leadership wasn't reserved for a single race, and that perseverance mattered more than acceptance. He set an example of professionalism, showing that preparation and focus could demand respect, even in a league unready to offer it. Thrower's college legacy is also a lesson in resilience. He played in an era of overt racial barriers, where talent alone could not guarantee opportunity. Yet he maintained dignity, earned respect, and left a lasting imprint, proof that change begins long before the headlines. Willie Thrower's historic NFL debut was more than a personal milestone, it was a mirror for the league itself. For one afternoon in 1953, he proved that a black quarterback could perform at the highest level, throwing passes, reading defenses, and commanding a professional offense with composure and skill. Yet the league's reaction revealed a deeper truth. The NFL wasn't ready to fully embrace change. Inside the Chicago Bears organization, the initial response to Thrower's debut was mixed. Coaches admired his intelligence, his calm under pressure, and his leadership, but they were constrained by a culture steeped in tradition. The Bears, like many teams at the time, were influenced by decades of unspoken rules. The quarterback position belonged to white athletes. Leadership, vision, and decision-making were viewed through the lens of race. Thrower's talent challenged assumptions, and rather than adapting, the organization hesitated. The team's hesitation wasn't limited to formal decisions. Subtle dynamics in the locker room and coaching staff reinforced barriers. Black quarterbacks were scrutinized for every mistake, while white quarterbacks were given leeway to learn and grow. Thrower's every throw, every decision, every audible at the line of scrimmage was examined, not as part of natural development, but as a test of whether the league's long-held assumptions about race were correct. Media coverage further complicated the narrative. Sports writers often framed Thrower's achievement as an experiment, an exception, or even a novelty. Headlines downplayed the significance of his performance, emphasizing his background or first-time status instead of leadership or skill. This messaging, intentional or not, reinforced the perception that black quarterbacks were temporary participants, not leaders built to last. Do you think the Chicago Bears truly wanted Willie Thrower to succeed, or was he only allowed to play to check a box? How much does team culture influence a player's career compared to raw talent? The league's broader culture compounded the problem.
Teams were risk-averse, valuing comfort and familiarity over talent and innovation. Thrower wasn't just playing a game, he was testing the system, and systems resist change. Despite his evident skill, Thrower was not given the tools to develop. Instead, he became a cautionary example. Black quarterbacks could compete, but they couldn't lead long-term without facing extraordinary obstacles. Thrower's experience illustrates a painful reality. Leadership and intelligence were not enough. The NFL's structure, influenced by decades of racial bias and rigid prototypes, limited opportunity, delayed progress, and quietly erased pioneers from history. Thrower's situation set a precedent. Later black quarterbacks, Marlon Briscoe, Joe Gilliam, James Harris, would face similar scrutiny, tempered by brief chances and high expectations. The league had already sent a silent message. Black QBs could participate, but only under restrictive conditions. Yet, Willie Thrower's resilience and professionalism did not go unnoticed. He remained poised, prepared, and respected by teammates, even as the system failed to reward him. His presence created a ripple effect, challenging assumptions and slowly opening minds, even if recognition wouldn't come for decades.
Willie Thrower's time in the NFL may have been brief, but his story did not end on that field. Though denied further opportunities in professional football, Thrower carried his lessons, experience, and pioneering spirit into the next chapter of his life, one that would continue to influence generations, even if the world barely recognized it at the time. After leaving the NFL, Thrower returned to New Jersey, focusing on his community and professional development. He worked tirelessly, using football not just as a personal achievement, but as a platform to inspire others. High school athletes, young black players, and aspiring quarterbacks looked to him as proof that talent and perseverance could break barriers, even if systems try to erase your accomplishments. Thrower's story became a lesson in resilience. He had experienced firsthand how a league could acknowledge your talent and still deny you the chance to grow. Yet he never let that silence diminish his love for the game or his belief in what black quarterbacks could accomplish. By mentoring young athletes, speaking about his experiences, and demonstrating professionalism in every setting, Thrower became a living symbol of what it meant to lead without recognition. The long-term influence of Willie Thrower is perhaps his most significant legacy. He demonstrated that intelligence, preparation, and composure could coexist with athleticism. His brief NFL appearance planted a seed of possibility that would blossom decades later as Marlon Briscoe, Joe Gilliam, James Harris, and eventually modern stars like Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson redefined the position. Thrower showed that the quarterback position could belong to anyone capable of leadership, regardless of race, long before the league was ready to admit it. How do you think history would have changed if Willie Thrower had been given multiple seasons in the NFL? Would the barriers faced by black quarterbacks in the 1960s and 1970s have been less severe? Thrower's experience also highlights a critical truth about sports history. Not every pioneer is celebrated in their time. Recognition often comes decades later, after patterns of inequality have been slowly challenged and societal perceptions evolve. Yet the lessons these pioneers provide, courage, resilience, and integrity, remain timeless. Willie Thrower's brief moment on the field serves as a reminder that history can erase names, but it cannot erase the impact of someone who breaks boundaries. Even today, his story resonates with young athletes who face obstacles, whether due to race, position stereotypes, or systemic bias. Thrower's journey encourages them to persevere, to lead, and to trust in their abilities, even when recognition is delayed. His legacy is not measured in seasons played or statistics accumulated, but in the doors he opened for future generations and the silent blueprint he left behind. Willie Thrower's story did not end with one NFL game or a brief professional career. It lives on in the quarterbacks who followed, in the barriers he quietly shattered, and in the conversations about race, leadership, and opportunity that continue in football today. Though many fans may never have heard his name, Thrower's influence is undeniable.
By taking the field as the first black quarterback in the modern NFL, he proved that intelligence, preparation, and leadership were not determined by skin color. His brief appearance became a silent message to the league. Talent cannot be ignored forever. An opportunity, when denied, leaves a lasting question mark over the sport. The ripple effects of his legacy are clear. Decades after Thrower's single game, players like Marlon Briscoe, Joe Gilliam, and James Harris stepped into roles that the NFL had once considered off-limits. These men faced many of the same systemic challenges Thrower experienced, but they benefited from the precedent he set. Thrower's courage demonstrated that black quarterbacks could not only participate, they could lead, make decisions, and elevate entire offenses. In modern football, the position of quarterback has been redefined. Dual-threat stars like Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson owe part of their opportunity to pioneers like Thrower, who proved decades earlier that the quarterback position is about skill, intellect, and leadership, not race. Without Thrower, the NFL's evolution might have been slower, the barriers taller, and the path for future black quarterbacks far more daunting. When we celebrate modern quarterbacks of color, do you think we fully appreciate the pioneers like Willie Thrower who made their path possible? Should history honor these trailblazers more prominently? And why do you think many of them remain relatively unknown? Thrower's legacy is also a lesson in perseverance and dignity. He never allowed the NFL's hesitation to define him, and he never publicly expressed bitterness. Instead, he focused on mentorship, community impact, and inspiring the next generation. In doing so, he transformed personal disappointment into societal influence, showing that leadership isn't only measured on on-field statistics, it's also measured by inspiration, example, and the barriers you help dismantle. Today, Willie Thrower's story serves as a bridge between generations. It reminds us that progress is rarely immediate, and that pioneers often face resistance, invisibility, and delayed recognition. But it also reminds us that the impact of courage, professionalism, and intelligence cannot be erased. Thrower didn't just play a game, he previewed the future of football, set a standard for opportunity, and quietly challenged a league to rethink its traditions. As viewers reflect on his journey, we are left with a powerful truth. History may forget names, but the doors they open, the barriers they break, and the inspiration they leave behind endure. Willie Thrower is not just a footnote, he is a foundation, a reminder that the sport we love today was built on the shoulders of those who dared to step into the spotlight when the world wasn't ready to see them shine.